But I do it from the creative standpoint before anybody gets to see it. So I have to take it on faith that I have readers out there who will follow me. So that's the first one. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. The second one, I worked in Central America, in Belize, on an archaeology dig back in 1983. And when the dig wrapped up, I'll backtrack a little bit. When you're on a dig, especially in Canada, especially at that time, you end up in a fairly isolated environment. Generally, you're in tents. There's 9 or 10 of you, and you're out in the bush. And eventually, or very quickly, actually, the civilized veneer of people's behavior just falls away, and you get to find out who they really are. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's Jack of the Shining. And I'm not kidding. My direction when I got in Canada, you call it bush fever. When I get bushed, I get more comical, but a lot of people go the opposite way. And so I did have a coworker attack me with a hatchet once, because I said the wrong thing at the wrong time. So that kind of experience on digs really informed the squads of the bridge burners. So that's one side of things. But anyways, back to Central America in '83. After the dig, I headed down to Honduras, discovered that it was a funnel for gun running into Nicaragua. And so I ended up in Nicaragua and then in Guatemala. I'm not going to tell a lot of that story. Guatemala was in the middle of a civil war at the time. And you had a massive population movement all through the Petén, heading up into Mexico. The aristocracy, if you will, the Latino aristocracy in Guatemala, were driving the native people off the mountainsides using the army. Basically, any Guatemalan coffee you drink now is black coffee. It was just horrendous what was going on. So entirely by accident, I found myself in the midst of all that. And I actually spent 3 days tracking my way through the jungle, trying to get back to Belize, dodging military vehicles. And it all started with me on a tarmac on an airstrip in the jungle in the Petén with an M16 to the back of my head. So, but I eventually made it through. But I did experience, I sort of wandered like a ghost through a fairly war-ravaged place. And I know a lot of that has stayed with me. And so when I'm writing, cheers.
Delicious points.
So when I'm writing this stuff, I try to sort of circle my way back to the emotions I was experiencing there. The worst day was in a crossroads outside a village that had been abandoned. And there were 3 cane cutters had been executed against a pig wall right beside me. And I was waiting for a cane truck or something to come by to get a ride. And there was a goat crying in the village endlessly. So finally I wandered into the village, and I did find the goat. It was in a pen in the backyard of a very, very poor ramshackle hut. And fire ants had found it. And because it was tied to a stake, it couldn't run away. So they were in the eyes, the nose, the ears, up the anus, all the rest. And it's the only animal I've ever killed. I found a broken machete and I killed it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. You spend a whole afternoon with three corpses. It's a pretty strange experience. So I made it back to Belize and went out to the Keys and bought an ounce of Sensibilia, and I just melted down for about 10 days. But you know, I get letters from veterans all the time, especially ones who are recovering from severe injuries.
I recommend your books to people
Do you?
with PTSD because they show a way out of it.
And I get, you just sent a chill through me because I get about a dozen of those a year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hands up. Let's go over here.
So when are we going to get a trilogy about the adventures of T. Holly and his chicken?
The Hole in the Chicken? Ask Terry Goodkin. I'm just kidding. No, I don't think there'll be an adventures for them. No. They've done their part. He's king to Hole, the only. Yeah.
Job done.
Job done.
Hands up. Back.
Just following back to what I started with, which was the gaming, because now you have me curious exactly what point in the books do you get past the material that you were elaborating on from campaigns and into wholly new creation?
A lot of it is new creation. A lot of what are gaming built the background history. That's why Cam is now writing The Origins of Empire with Kellerman and Dancer. That is what we gained. And so,
Right.
if you think about it, Gardens of the Moon starts after all of that.
Okay. And secondly, would you consider taking the suggestion of not doing foreign digs anymore as
I still volunteer. I've worked for a few years in southern Italy, in Puglia, on a very interesting site. And but I did realize after Mongolia that I was getting too old for this crap, and so I try to be more civilized in my approach now. So these are well-run digs; they're not run by flaming idiots like they were in Russia. In Mongolia.
Right, just as we get the end of this before we go on to sign, and anybody else? Right, it's yourself.
Which of the supporting characters have stuck with you all these years? You've so
Which
many
which?
of your supporting characters, like the
Supporting?
minor characters, like, for
Minor
example, as in like the certain Marines, for example.
Mhm.
I give you like Vastly Blank, for example.
Vastly blank. Yeah. Which has stayed with me. No, I think I was fairly content with their fates. I'm not going to give away too much because of this generally is not.
It's all my fault.
But the only thing I can promise is some time in the Karsa trilogy you will meet some of the regulars who were there in the Crypt of God. And I have revealed earlier today in the coffee clutch, somebody said that one of the favorite characters was Spindle. Was that you?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you're in luck, because he's probably the only bridge burner who is going to be in the Karsa.
Anyway, folks, thank you very much to Stephen. We're sticking around. It's not all over. Stephen's going to sign whatever you brought with you. And then when we're done, we're going to go upstairs. We're going to drink
I'm
more
not
pints.
signing anything.
He's done. I have to tell people when I first asked Stephen, I seen he was over for Worldcon. I said, "Do you want to get together with some of your fans and do some signings and some Q&As?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I said, "Do you need anything?" And he said, "Guinness." That was literally it. So, everybody, thank you very much to Stephen. If everybody wants to get together, get your stuff together. We're going to create a space here for Malloyan. And Stephen's going to sign all your books and your arses.